Welcome to the show, everyone.
That was scary.
That's the best.
Terrifying.
That one
was
my
amazing.
favorite.
Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about, reimaging with fewer clicks, because who wants to click a lot? That's why we have Glenn with us, a SmartDeploy deep dive.
Yeah, so my understanding is that much of this audience would be more familiar with PDQ's other line of products, Deploy and Inventory, compared to SmartDeploy. So I will start with a few of the basics, and y'all can see my screen right now, yes?
Not quite yet.
We will soon.
Oh, excellent.
Go
So,
ahead and share that again there, Glenn. Yeah.
oh, all right.
Oh, wait, no, you have it here.
I was going to say, yeah, it's up in. Okay, perfect. There we go.
You did it.
All right. Hello, everyone. So this is what the SmartDeploy console looks like. And if you are looking to automate your reimaging operations, that's to say if you want to take a standard image with whatever OS you want, whatever OS version you want, whatever software you want to have installed on it, create it in a virtual environment, capture that, and put it onto each one of your machines, this is the software for you. So SmartDeploy, the console contains a number of different functions relating to this, but today we're going to be talking about the answer file wizard. Now, the answer file wizard is intended to automate those deployments. Now, every reimaging operation that you perform with SmartDeploy is performed in basically the same way. We have the Windows pre-installation environment, or Windows PE. It's exactly the same environment that exists outside of the OS that's installed on that machine. It actually runs from within active memory. You boot the device to some sort of external boot device, whether that's a USB stick, or you can use Windows Deployment Services, or WDS, for Pixie Boot. And we also have a client-based deployment method that lets you do console-initiated deployment. So from the SmartDeploy console, you can find one of your computers in the computer management view here. My test machine here doesn't have any clients connected to it at the moment, but you can right-click a computer and deploy an image to it. You can also update drivers and do a variety of other tasks on it, but we're not talking about that today. The point is, either way, one way or another, that device is going to reboot itself into a Windows PE environment, and from there, it can do things like wipe the entire hard drive and apply an operating system to it. So
Glenn,
yes,
I'm going to ask a quick question just to give you a chance to breathe a little bit.
by all means.
Is it possible to, when you're reimaging, to have it include your agent automatically? So during the reimage, you don't have to go through the agent install process, or is that something you have to do again every time?
Yeah, so that's particularly that is possible, and it's particularly important if you're doing console-initiated deployment, because the assumption is you're not going to have hands on that machine at all. It's just going to reboot itself and reimage itself with a fully unattended. That's to say, nobody puts hands on it at all. Doesn't have to click through anything. It'll do a 30-second countdown, and it'll proceed with deployment with whatever instruction set that you provide. And that is what an answer file is for. So that's actually a great intro here. And to answer your question, one of the settings in the answer file wizard is to install the client. So if you check that box and configure the options in there correctly, it will install that client after the reimaging operation is complete. It'll point it back to that same console. And then there in computer management, where you found that machine in the first place, you'll see that the deployment is completed and that machine is back up.
So quick question, Glenn, because we talked about this week, and Jordan actually did a video. So say we have our clients who use Deploy and Inventory, and they have pushed out the installer using Deploy.
Yeah.
So talk us through that scenario quickly. So they have a fleet of already existing computers. They've deployed the agent. Now what do they do?
Yeah, so the SmartDeploy client can be installed using any method you like. You don't actually have to reimage the machine to install it. That's just one of the available options. So if you are reimaging a machine and you want the client to be available, you can tick the box in the answer file wizard to install that client, and then it will have the client, and you can do console-initiated deployments on that machine from that point on. If you've got a bunch of machines that already are up and running in your environment that you don't want to reimage necessarily immediately, you could push out the SmartDeploy client to them through group policy, or you could push them out using software like PDQ Deploy. The SmartDeploy client would be installed on each one of them. It runs the SmartDeploy client service, which is talking back and forth with the console over your local network. Or if it is unable to reach the console over your local network, it will reach out to our online API service, and it will connect using a cloud connection instead. And that enables you to perform cloud-based deployments as well. That's a deployment of an image that exists in your personal cloud storage account with Google Drive, Dropbox, Box, or OneDrive, and also the business versions of each of those.
Okay, so there's a lot of questions about Azure and cloud, but maybe let's go through the answer file, and then we can kind of come back to the question. So yes, we can deploy the agent in a variety of different fashions, as you just answered. Yes, our Deploy and Inventory customers can push it out and deploy, but let's go back to the answer file. So let's start there.
Okay, so from here in the console, we will click on the category of reimage devices and click on create answer file. So the purpose of the answer file wizard is to provide a set of instructions for what SmartDeploy should do in that Windows PE environment. Because if you don't include an answer file and you boot to SmartDeploy Media, what you're going to get is a splash screen that says deploy an image or exit or settings, a few other things. Basically, it won't do anything unless there is an answer file.
And
Now,
Glenn, you're
yeah.
supposing that I already have a Windows 10 image created, right?
Indeed. In this scenario,
Yep.
you have already built a reference virtual machine on one of our supported platforms. Those include Hyper-V, VMware Workstation, VMware ESX. You can read all of those in the release notes. But basically, you create a brand new virtual machine. You install the Windows operating system using media from Microsoft. So you want to use something from either the Volume License Servicing Center or the Media Creation Tool. Basically, just something that has not been customized for specific hardware. So you don't want to use any OEM recovery media or images. You don't want to use any pre-existing machines that you've captured from a physical machine into a virtual one. We have an entire list of best practices for creating your reference VMs, which you can find at support.smartdeploy.com if you want to know more about that.
And this walks you through every step, right? Because I've just actually
will.
gone through this. So it takes you through each and every step of this process.
Yep, and you can see here, those steps are all laid out in the console as well. So you build your virtual machine, you capture an image from that virtual machine once it's shut down, you download platform packs, which are driver packs that are specific to a make and model of target device. You create an answer file to automate your deployments, and then you create some specific media type to deliver in order to be able to boot that device and use that answer file to perform that deployment. So right now, we are going to go ahead and create one of those answer files. There we are. So answer file wizard, I will take you into the advanced options first. We'll click this button, advanced. Now, here in the advanced options, one of the first things you'll notice is that all answer files are unattended by default, like I mentioned. So if you create any media with an answer file that you've created with this default option enabled, you will boot to that external device. It'll count down 30 seconds and it'll proceed with deployment. You will not have a chance to see any of these settings per deployment. You won't have a chance to change any of these settings per deployment. So I will go ahead and change this to attended, just so you can see the full array of options here. Attended simply means that it will have all of the options filled in already in Deploy Wizard. It will have them filled in exactly as you filled them in here in the answer file wizard, but you, as the technician that is booting that specific device, can change any of those options for that specific deployment if you want to. So we will cover all those options here and some scenarios where somebody might want to do that. Most of the rest of these settings you will probably not be using, but we have information about them on our KB. If you go to support.smartdeploy.com and click and search for create an answer file, there are details on every one of these options here. Let's see here. Yeah, disk options, mostly not going to be touching this. The default mode for this is to wipe the entire hard drive of the target machine, including partition structure, and replace it with whatever was present on the reference VM. So that is what recreate drives means. Wipe and load is usable for certain scenarios where you want to preserve some data on that target hard drive, and that is... and what it will do instead is wipe the data except for a protected backup folder, but it will leave the partition structure intact. You can then deploy an image to that device, but it has to match the partition structure of the target device perfectly in advance. So for most scenarios, recreate drives is going to be the correct option here. Tasks. So tasks are command lines that can be run during any phase of deployment. These can be useful if you want to do anything fancy during your deployment. Now, 2 of these occur in Windows PE. There's before and after the image is applied. So if you want to do anything like run a custom script to put a wonky partition structure on the target device, you can do that. If you want to run a script after deployment to do something fancy, so copy some files to your deployed image or to do something fancy with the sysprep unattend.xml files. We've got a variety of different scenarios for that. You can run those scripts using this here. These last 3 options specialize mini setup, that is after the image finishes applying and the device reboots back to its hard drive, which is after the deployment is complete, and Windows has sort of taken the ball from there. It will run sysprep specialize, and then it will execute any tasks that you specify to occur during the specialize phase. Mostly, if you're doing software installations or things like that, as a scripted task as a part of deployment, you would probably want to do first boot as system, because the operating system configuration process is completely done at that point, and no user has logged in yet. Anything that is run under first boot as system gets run as the local system account, which is an account that is used by Windows services to perform administrative tasks. So it'll work just fine for software installations. One common reason why you might install a piece of software this way way instead of installing it on your reference VM prior to capture is if it has any client-specific identifiers on it that might get stripped away by sysprep, the Windows sysprep tool, then you can't install it in your reference VM prior to capture. You have to install it after. If the software has the potential to interfere with sysprep in some way, and antivirus software is pretty high on that list, you may want to install that after deployment as well. The end result is the same. You still end up with machines that all have your required software on there. You just may need to install it as either a scripted task or an application pack, which we'll cover here in a moment as well. And of course, you could push those out using PDQ deploy as well. It's definitely possible to use these products in parallel. First log on to desktop, similar idea, except it will run it will execute whatever task you specify using the run once area in the Windows registry, and it will run under the authority of whatever user logs in. So if you include a first log on to desktop task here, and back here on the general tab, if you include auto logon, which allows you to automatically log in with a specified account a certain number of times, you can have it automatically log in and run a task as a user if you wish to do that. And some installers are very particular about the security settings they run under, or there may be some specific reason why you want it to run under a user context. You do have that option here via first logon. Okay, now mostly people are not going to be messing with these settings here, but you can configure static IP address or static DNS. This is to be applied to the target device. It is not going to apply in Windows PE. If anybody is particularly curious about that scenario, long story short, you can search for static IP at support.smartdeploy.com. There is a scenario for console-initiated deployment where if you are in an environment that uses static IP addresses, we will automatically pass that information through to Smart PE, and we will automatically apply it to the deployed device. And you will not have to configure anything on this tab for that to happen. That is simply automatic behavior that occurs without any user interaction needed. Wireless. That is probably not something you've heard about in Windows PE before, because Windows PE does not support wireless. We had to add the wireless stack ourselves in order to support this, but we do support wireless deployment. So similarly to, you can configure a wireless network in advance here, and it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty basic because this functionality did not exist in Windows PE to begin with. Any network that uses standard, basically a password and has a broadcast SSID, you can add it in there. If you're deploying to endpoints, say in employees' homes, where you're not going to know this information in advance, you can do console-initiated deployment, and the SmartDeploy client will automatically pass through any information about any currently connected Wi-Fi networks to Smart PE, and it'll automatically pass that information through to the deployed OS. So the device should maintain a connection the entire way through that process without any user interaction required. That should just happen as well. But if you want to add an additional wireless network to be configured here, this is additive to whatever is passed through automatically from the client. So you can add a wireless network here, and it will also pass through any information about current connections in Windows. So we'll go ahead and close the advanced options here. Any questions before I move on? Any questions from the panel?
Oh, there's so many questions.
We actually
yes.
do. We've got like 7 so far.
Yeah,
Alright.
let's pop a question.
You're a hit, Glenn. People are loving you, man.
All right.
All right.
So we have a question here, everybody. Let's take that. So, Kelly, do you want to read them?
No, yeah, I can.
Yeah. All right.
I learned to read recently, so
I just wanted to give you an opportunity to test that out.
thank you. I want to show off my new skill. Will there be a feature in a future release that will copy the installed software state into a template to clone/deploy the same software to other computers? Sincerely, laptop.
If this is a question on the SmartDeploy side of things, my answer is it depends on the software. Some software is designed with enterprise deployment in mind. In particular, things like Microsoft Office, the Adobe Creative Suite, anything that is intended for an enterprise environment and they presume is going to be deployed in this manner, where you install it on a reference VM and then you capture that reference VM or a reference machine. Because some people do use physical machines for this if they're using a different imaging approach. Either way, you have a machine that has that software installed. You are taking an image of that and you are applying it to all of your other machines in your environment. And then there is usually some sort of user-based authentication for those. Office 365 in particular, you would install the Office applications on your reference VM, but you don't launch any of them. In fact, if you launch any of them, that's very bad, and you have to uninstall and reinstall Office if you do that. But as long as you don't launch any of the applications, you can capture that image and you can deploy it out to an endpoint. And then as soon as the user first launches an Office application, they would be prompted to log in. And as long as that user has an Office license associated with them, then it would go ahead and activate that software. That is just one example. Some software is going to have licensing handled in other ways. It might have a certificate. It might have a site code. It might have some file that needs to be copied into a particular location. So copying the software state is unlikely to be something that will ever have a singular answer, just because there are so many different ways to do it. Particular settings for software may or may not be transferable from one machine to another. So my unfortunate answer to this is something that you need to test. It is something that you have quite a lot of latitude to test within SmartDeploy, because you can do all of this with a reference virtual machine, and the worst thing you're going to have to do is roll that VM back to an earlier state. So if it doesn't work and you need to install it as a part of deployment, you've got plenty of options to do that. But if it does work and you can keep it as a part of your image, then so much the better.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Do you want to do another one?
Yeah, let's do another one.
How does SmartDeploy handle joining the machine to a domain/Azure, especially remotely? James D.
I'm going to defer this question until we reach that page of Deploy Wizard, or of Azure File Wizard, but rest assured I will cover this.
Cool. And then we have one other question just in the chat from Christina. She says, so reimaging to a remote wireless client will remain connected throughout the process?
It will not remain connected continuously through the process, because it can't be connected to a wireless network while it is rebooting or while Windows image is applying. But in the Windows PE environment, it will connect to that wireless network. If it's doing a cloud-based deployment, it actually has to have an internet connection, because it needs to be able to download the image and platform packs and things like that. And then once it reboots into Windows, Windows will go through its setup process. It will not be connected during that time, because it's doing things like installing network drivers. But once that is done, it will go ahead and reconnect to the wireless profile, which will go ahead and get applied as a part of that process. So not without interruption, but it will be back online once the OS imaging process is complete.
Cool.
Love it.
All right.
Should we continue?
Let's continue.
Yes, let's. Okay, so we have covered all the advanced options here. We have my screen back up. Perfect. All right, so we'll go next. Now, here's where you select what type of media you plan on using. So whether you're going to be deploying over the local network or offline deployment media. Basically, that just means, is the device on site at the same location as the console or not? If it's not, you're going to want to use a cloud storage provider. Now, I'm not going to show you the cloud storage provider version of this, but basically what it will give you is a different image selection screen. Your SmartDeploy console has to be logged into whatever cloud storage provider you are planning on using, and you can browse through the images that you have previously uploaded for cloud deployment. That entire cloud deployment topic is much bigger than we're planning on covering today. But again, support.smartdeploy.com, you can read all about it and see examples of this. So we'll stick with a local network or offline deployment media here. You'll note that this checkbox has appeared here in the lower left corner that says skip this page. So if you are doing an attended answer file, which works for USB media, it works for WDS boot media, and it works for USB offline deployment media. It does not work for console-initiated deployment. If you create an attended answer file, that's one where somebody has to click through, and you try to create a deployment package for console-initiated deployment, that answer file will be marked as unattended, and those skip values for each page will not be respected. It will just not display Deploy Wizard at all. That is by design. The assumption is for console-initiated deployment, you will not be in front of that machine, and you will not be able to click through that wizard. So, but for all other media types, for USB or WDS boot media, you can apply the setting that is on this page for an attended deployment, but not actually. If you are not intending to change it for a particular deployment ever, and this is an example of a setting that you would probably not want to change for any deployment ever, if you're just doing local deployments here, you can skip this page and it will apply this setting, but not actually show the technician this page. So again, fewer clicks. Click next here. Here's where you would enter network credentials to access the network share where your image is located here. Because we are not going to actually perform a deployment here, I'm going to enter dummy credentials without semicolons. There we go. And yeah, these are not stored in plain text in your answer file. They are encrypted, and but they are stored in that encrypted form in the XML file itself. And that is how your endpoint and the Windows PE environment is going to map a network drive to the share where your image exists and where your platform packs exist, and be able to perform that network-based deployment. Going to go ahead and skip that page as well. Click next. Here is where you browse to and select an image file that you want to use. I've got a Windows 10 image here that I will go ahead and use. And you can see here, this is going to have whatever name and description you specified when you captured the image. So it is possible for a WIM file to contain more than one image. And if it does, what you will see here is a drop down that shows every image that is included in that WIM file. Generally speaking, disk space is cheaper than it's ever been before, so I don't see this as commonly as I used to, but it is a way of saving some disk space. Because the WIM file format uses single instance storage, which means if you have multiple Windows images, any files that are binary identical between them, which is going to be most of the operating system files, will only be stored a single time within that file. So if you've got two Windows images in the same WIM file, they will take up much less space than if you have separate WIM files for each image. But again, it creates some additional complication when you go to update those images. So there are trade-offs to that method, and generally, people, in my experience lately, just want to use the disk space and keep it simple.
So real quick, Glenn,
yeah.
Is there any way we can zoom in on the wizard you have open? Some people are reporting it's hard to read what's going on.
Okay, let me see what I can do about that. That might be something we have to do in the streaming platform if it's possible. I cannot make this window any bigger, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it's not possible on this.
Well, instead of
either.
doing the share, instead of sharing the whole screen, can he share just that one specific window, and then it would be
No. It's a screen.
Yep.
Yep. Unfortunately, that is if anybody's having a hard time seeing this, I do apologize for that. And we will what we will probably want to do is point you to support.smartdeploy.com, where we have screenshots of every page of this wizard here, so you can see them up close and personal. If you need to investigate what any of those options do, you can definitely do that. And if you have any questions about Answer File Wizard as you're getting started, you can definitely submit the support form in the upper right corner, or you can email us at support@smartdeploy.com. You can feel free to say, hey, attention, Glenn, you didn't zoom into this window, and that's why I'm asking you specifically this question. Feel free to do that. It will find its way to me. All right, so we've selected an image here. It is on a local administrative share path. What an administrative share here is going to be the built-in shares that are built into Windows that any any local administrative user on this console host can access remotely. They can have some security restrictions applied to them. One little tidbit for just the webcast audience is we are doing away with this requirement in the next release of SmartDeploy. We have heard feedback from customers that they do not love using administrative shares, and they would prefer to have a folder share with limited permissions here for better security. And we have listened. So that is going to be in the next version. That is going to be the default mode in the next version. It will be a standard share, which is not going to use that $$ notation for the hard drive. It'll just be a standard share with a service account that has limited permissions to just that directory. All right, so we have gone ahead and selected the image that we want to deploy for this answer file. Now, here's an example of where you might want to not skip the page. If you're doing an attended answer file and okay, I've got one set of media here, but I might have two different images. And for some of my machines, I want image A, and for some of my machines, I want image B. You can leave this checkbox unchecked, and then your technician can either stick with the image that is configured here in the answer file, or click browse and pick a different image in the same directory. If that's what makes the most sense in your environment, if you're doing about 50-50 and you don't want to create separate boot images that point to one install image or the other, you can do it this way. All right, I'll go ahead and click next here. Now, here's where you specify the platform pack location. Now, the default value for this is going to be a variable called image folder. That literally means the folder where your WIM file is stored, which is on this machine, it's C drive SmartDeploy images in the SmartDeploy directory. That is the default one here. We have a little bit of intelligence baked into this here. So if you are using the standard SmartDeploy directory here, which is C drive SmartDeploy, or it can be configured to be on a different hard drive as well on the same machine, it will automatically look up and over one directory from the images folder to the platform packs folder, and that is where those are. Platform packs are specific to a particular manufacturer and model, as well as a specific operating system. So if you are deploying to, say, an HP ProBook 650 G3, I'm assuming that's a real machine, and what it will look for is a platform pack for that specific device. You can have multiple platform packs in that same folder, and only the correct one will ever be used. Only a platform pack that is a match for the make, model, and the OS that you're deploying will ever be used. If there is no matching platform pack, you will get a warning in SmartPE that says, hey, we couldn't find a platform pack for this manufacturer, model, or OS. Do you want to continue anyway? If you say yes in response to that warning, it will deploy without using any platform pack whatsoever. So you will only have the inbox drivers that are built into Windows itself. But generally speaking, what it will do is find the platform pack and proceed from there. I'll go ahead and answer one question that you might be wondering in advance. What about Windows 10 versus Windows 11? There is some driver cross-compatibility between Windows 10 and Windows 11, so how does SmartDeploy handle that? Well, if you've got a Windows 11 and a Windows 10 platform pack for the same model and you are deploying a Windows 11 image, it will use the Windows 11 pack. If you're deploying a Windows 11 image and you only have a Windows 10 pack for that device, it will go ahead and use the Windows 10 pack. So it will preferentially use the one that matches the OS, but it will treat Windows 10 packs as compatible with Windows 11. We can't guarantee that they will work. It relies on the compatibility that the manufacturer has made with that particular device. Many Windows 10 drivers are as many as 7 years old at this point. So it's something that you want to test. And it's something you want to make sure that the current version of the platform pack works. Some of these platform packs, particularly if they're for older machines, may not have been updated in a little while. Some of them might be up to date, but there might not be any newer drivers available from the manufacturer. So if you run into any trouble deploying Windows 11 to an older device, definitely reach out to support, because we may be able to update a platform pack to make it work, assuming the manufacturer has made that support available for that device.
Can you build your own platform packs, or is it something that you have to choose from the list of options that you have?
You can build your own platform packs, and sometimes people do that for white box machines where it's just a custom built desktop that has a set of components that'll never repeat again, basically. It's generally not something that we can, it's generally not something we can help out too much with, but we do offer it as a service as well. So if you've got a driver set available for something that is a bit less common or a bit more consumer oriented or a bit more industry oriented, we've done some specialized medical devices and financial system devices and things like that. You can definitely get help from SmartDeploy support on a fee basis for that. Now, the most common business class laptops, desktops, all-in-ones, those are all going to be included with any level of SmartDeploy subscription at no additional cost. And if you go to smartdeploy.com/support/platform packs, I believe, there is a list of which models are included with the basically without any additional cost at that lowest tier, which is going to be for Dell's, it's Latitude, Optiplex, Precision. For Lenovo's, it's going to be anything with the word Think in it. For HP's, it's going to be anything with the word Pro in it, and there are a few other ones as well. But some of them cost different levels depending on the complexity or commonality of the machine and the level of driver support that's available for it. We try to make those prices reflect the cost of our effort when it comes to creating those packs. So we do feel they're very fair, but yeah, generally speaking, for the most common business class devices, you're not going to have to pay anything, and most likely the pack already exists. We have about 1,500 of them in the library already, and the more common business class devices tend to get requested very early and updated frequently. And if you ever want to request a platform pack, you can do that at support.smartdeploy.com. Just click on Submit a Request in the top right corner. If you don't know whether it'll cost money or not, rest assured we will never just build the pack and then send you a bill. We will definitely reach out before building a pack that would incur a fee and make sure that's okay with you and get you to sign a PO for it. So, all right. Next up, now that we've selected the platform pack location, you can select application packs. Now, application packs are self-contained packages that are basically a zip file with metadata is essentially how they function. They contain files to install a piece of software, and they can run command lines against those files, or they can run command lines that have nothing to do with those files. It's possible to configure an application pack to download a file from a URL and run that file. There are a lot of different things you can do with application packs. And again, support.smartdeploy.com, search for Create a Custom Application Pack if you want to know more about this. We're not going to install any application packs today, so we'll click Next. Here is where you set the naming convention. Now, A naming convention is a set of rules for how all of your computers should be named. It is not a name for this specific machine for this specific deployment. It's what formula should I follow to generate computer names in this environment. So you can see we have an orderable list here. The first item in the list, and these will be executed in whatever order they appear in this list. So if you want to move these around, you can move up, move down. Pretty straightforward. The first option is going to be to use the existing computer name. So if you're reimaging a machine that's already been up and running in your environment, the first thing it will try to do is pull that existing username, and if it's able to do that, it will go ahead and use it. The next option here is to read from a WMI property. Most commonly, we see people using this to read the serial number from the system firmware and use that either as the entire computer name or as a part of the computer name. It's possible to take a WMI query and add a prefix to it. You can see the WMI query is here, and the default one is select SMBIOS asset tag from Win32 system enclosure. If you want to do serial number, that's just going to be the name for that value is pretty hard to remember. It's serial number, capital S, capital N, and you can use that one as well. The SMBIOS asset tag one that is here is a value that is generally blank by default and user configurable. So if you have a specific asset tag designation for that machine that you want to use, something that's on a sticker on the outside of that machine that's never going to change no matter how many times it gets reimaged, you can go ahead and set that in the system firmware and then use the WMI query option to pull that information from the system firmware and use it every time. So that is an option as well. Now, because these first two options can possibly fail, there might not be an existing computer name. The WMI property or the WMI query might be invalid or blank. Your final fallback option here is to generate a custom name, and that is just going to be the letter A with 8 random numbers here. You can change this to whatever you want. So some people will put a company specific prefix on the beginning and then whatever number of random digits. As long as whatever formula you specify here results in a valid Windows computer name, which is anything that is 15 characters or less, and there's a list of special characters that are included. You'll want to look up under Microsoft Docs for that, but anything 15 characters or less that gets generated as a result of this page will be used. So we'll click next. Common question at this point is, well, hey, what if I want to set a specific computer name per deployment? That does not occur on this page. I will show you which page that occurs on here in a moment. So we'll click next. Here is user data migration. What this uses is the Microsoft USMT. That's the user state migration tool. It runs an executable called scan state, which backs up the user state, user files, some application settings from the existing OS on that machine, and then it backs it up to whatever location you specify. That can either be a network share, which you can specify here, or you can store the files locally. That is one possible use of that wipe and load drives disk option that I mentioned. You back up the user data to a migration file on the local hard drive on this machine that you are deploying to. It will go into a backup folder, and that folder will survive the imaging process. You can, and then once the operating system is deployed, it will go ahead and run load state, which is the other half of USMT, to restore all of that user data to the deployed OS after the operation is complete. So this screen right here is only intended if you are planning to refresh an existing machine with exactly the same user information. So you're reimaging the OS on that machine, but you want to take the user data from before that operation and you want to reapply it afterward. It is not an option for if you want to migrate user data from one machine to a different machine. You can do that from the computer management view in the SmartDeploy console. You can capture user data from one machine and restore it to a different machine. Those are just standard options within computer management. So we'll go ahead and leave this unchecked since we're not doing that today. Click next. Here's where you can enter a Windows product key. This is an optional screen. You can apply a Windows product key here. Now, this is one of two opportunities that we give for you to provide a Windows product key. The other is during Capture Wizard. So after you've created your reference virtual machine and you run Capture Wizard to capture that WIM file that we're going to be deploying here, it is possible to enter a Windows product key at that time. And if you did do that, then whatever image you selected while going through Answer File Wizard already has a Windows product key associated with it, then Answer File Wizard will not even show you this page. So if it's already got a Windows product key baked in to the image itself, then it won't ask you for this. If you do specify one here, it gets encrypted. It is not stored in plain text, and it gets added to the Answer File XML as well. Regardless of which way you entered a Windows product key, it is applied in exactly the same way. SmartDeploy will pass it through to Windows using the sysprep unattend.xml files, and then Windows will attempt to install that product key during sysprep specialize, and it will attempt to reach out to Microsoft and activate. We do not have any control over that process. It is done entirely between the deployed OS and Microsoft. So basically, you will want to make sure that you're using a valid product key for the version of Windows that you're deploying, and it's fairly easy to test this on a machine in your environment manually. You can simply deploy it with no product key at all, and then use the SLMGR tool to apply that product key after deployment, and just make sure that you can successfully install that product key and activate that machine. If you can do it once manually, you can automate it as many times as you like. All right, so we'll leave this blank. Click next. This is the page where you would join a domain if you want to. Now, you can speak to, I believe it was James's question. Here's where you would enter an on-prem AD domain. So you would enter that into in here in FQDN format, it's fully qualified domain name format. You can also enter an OU, or an organizational unit. If you want to enter one of those, that is going to be in distinguished name format. If you have any trouble finding the distinguished name for the OU you're trying to join, you can definitely reach out to support, or there are various online guides for where to find that. It's basically something you find in Active Directory by browsing to the OU within that Active Directory widget on your domain controller. Pretty straightforward. If you specify an OU here, it will go ahead and add that machine to that OU. One quick tip here is that if this machine was already part of a different OU prior to deployment, you cannot use this process to move it from one OU to another. That will only work if you delete the computer object from Active Directory before performing the reimaging operation. A domain join operation cannot move a machine from one OU to another.
So, Glenn, I have a question about that, because there's a question in here, and I'm also curious.
Yeah.
What about if that name exists in AD previously? Is it going to register the conflict?
Yeah, so if the computer previously existed in AD in a particular OU and you don't specify anything here, it will go ahead and put it back into that same OU. So it should recognize the existing computer object, and it should pick up right where that one left off, basically. So if it is a scenario where you're reimaging the machine and leaving the same computer name on it, it should be able to rejoin the domain without issue, and it should be back in the same OU that it was in before.
Oh, okay. So just to plan what you're talking about. So say I'm going to reimage 20 sales machines, and I have a sales OU where all my sales computers live, and I want a particular image. I'm going to save that answer file as my sales answer file, and I'm going to do everything exactly the same, and all my machines are going to be beautiful, and they're going to live in the sales OU in perfect harmony. Is that the idea here?
That is one possible version of this, yes. You could create an answer file that is specific to that department, and there might be other reasons why you want to do that. You might have specific application packs that you want to install that are specific to sales, so that is a valid approach. For the specific scenario that you laid out, where they are already in a sales OU prior to reimaging, you would not need to have a separate answer file for this purpose. You could simply join them to the domain, and they should pick up back in that sales OU right where they left off, assuming you're keeping the computer name the same. So if you're reimaging an existing sales machine, it's already in the sales OU. You could leave the screen configured exactly as it is right now, just joining the domain, but not specifying an OU at all, and it should simply join the domain and go back into the same OU that it was in before.
Beautiful. I love it. I'm super compulsive, Glenn, so this is working out for me really well.
Awesome. So the other option here is to do an Azure AD domain join. Because this is user-based, it's pretty basic. What you do here is you tick this box, and we will show you just that one screen of the Windows out-of-box experience. So as soon as the deployment is complete, as soon as it's gone through sysprep, you will see just that one screen where it prompts you to connect to a wireless network and then join an Azure AD domain. You'll enter your Azure AD domain credentials, and it will go ahead and attempt to join the Azure domain. Assuming that user has the rights to do that, you should be able to do that and proceed from there. Or you can just leave it on workgroup and not join a domain at all. Now, if you are that user who wants to do a specific computer name per deployment, and none of those naming conventions work perfectly for you, and you're just like, hey, I want my technician to enter the computer name that's on this sticker right here, that's on the machine. Or I've got a spreadsheet. I want to number them sequentially 1 through 30, and we don't know what arrangement they're going to have in advance physically, so I'll just need to punch them in as I go down the line. Something that just can't be automated easily. what you can do is leave this page visible, and this page is called Network Identification, and there will be an additional text box on this page in the deployment environment that says computer name, and that is the computer name that will be used for this specific deployment. You can't see it right now because Answer File Wizard doesn't show that text box to you because it's intending to create a rule set for all of your machines, but in Deploy Wizard, that text box will be here, and as long as you leave the network identification page visible, your technician will be able to wipe out whatever's in that text box and enter whatever computer name they want. All right, so we'll leave that visible. Some basic region and time zone settings here. You can see I am in Pacific time because I'm in Seattle. And you can select the language and region settings as well. Next.
So we can grab entire Wi-Fi profiles, but we can't grab that by default where we have to go through and manually set the time zone.
You know, it's a trade-off. So it's automatically setting it based on what's in the console host. So whenever I've seen users at PDQ headquarters running SmartDeploy, they always show Mountain Time there. So it is pulling that information automatically. It's just not pulling it from the client. The assumption is that whatever machine you're deploying is going to be the same as the console host. That's an interesting idea, pulling it from the target device. It's probably something we could take as a feature request, but it's not something we've gotten a lot of pushback on. Typically, if people are creating answer files, they are specific to a particular office. For those scenarios where you're deploying employee machines in the field that might be spread out across the country or even across the world, to be honest, that's the first time I've ever heard somebody suggest, hey, pick up the region settings automatically so we don't have to customize our answer file in that way. It's an interesting idea. So if you have any feature requests like that, feel free to shoot an email over to feedback@smartdeploy.com. I can't make any promises, but our engineers do read everything that comes to that address. All right, so here is where you can install the SmartDeploy client as a part of deployment. So if you are, so a couple different scenarios where this would make sense. If you're doing console-initiated deployment of any kind, a local one or a cloud one, you're going to want that SmartDeploy client installed because otherwise you won't know when the deployment is complete. You won't be able to interact with that machine or perform any other operations on it. So you'll want to install that. You can see here that by default, it's going to populate the name of this machine, which this machine has my name in it, but it's right there. On port 8080, that is the local SmartDeploy API service URL. That is how the SmartDeploy clients connect to the SmartDeploy API service, which is what runs on your console host and performs all of the work that your console is asking it to do. Any messages that you want to send to your devices telling them, hey, reimage yourself, hey, update your drivers, hey, install this application pack, all of that goes through this local API service URL, and the SmartDeploy client is going to be checking in and looking for messages using that method. Now, it is possible to tick a box here for cloud only. If you know that this particular machine is only ever going to be offsite, it's never going to be within your network, and it will never be connecting locally. Or if you have a machine that you know is going to be bouncing on and off VPN, so sometimes it might be able to connect locally, but you don't want it to connect locally because you're not going to try and reimage a machine over VPN. That would be insane. Don't do that. But we've had some people try it. We've had some people try it successfully. It's not a good idea, though. So if you don't want to bog down your VPN with 5 to 8 gigabytes of OS traffic, that is generally something where you want to tick this box to say cloud only. The only difference in behavior that this will trigger is when the SmartDeploy client first runs on a machine, on any machine that you install it on, it'll spend 5 minutes trying to connect to that local API service URL. And if you're on the local network, that's more than enough time for it to connect, and it'll start heartbeating with the console, and it'll show up in the console with a local connection type, and you can perform local or cloud-based deployments to that machine. If it is unable to reach the SmartDeploy console after 5 minutes, it will then fail over to api.smartdeploy.com, which is our online API service. And the client and the console will both talk to our online API service, and they will connect to each other that way instead. The clients are all specific to a particular console and a particular account, so rest assured you will never see anybody else's machines showing up in your console in this way. Your machines will not show up in anybody else's console either. It'll only show up in the specific console that you specified when you created this installer package.
Hey, Glenn, are these settings in the answer file finite once I finish my answer file, or can I go back and edit them?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can edit an existing answer file in the SmartDeploy console. So in the answer files view, I want to do that. There it is. In the answer files view in the console, I don't have any created at the moment here, but all of the answer files that exist here, including the one that we're about to create here, will appear here in the answer files view. If you right-click one of them and click Edit Answer File, it will actually open that answer file in the answer file wizard again.
Okay, so if I go through and I'm like, oh, I meant to do that, I can go back and change it later.
Very easily, yes.
Okay, cool.
And then you can resave the file. Also, if you want to iterate, so if you want to create an answer file for, say, the sales department, like the example you mentioned, and then you want to go through and make a few tweaks to it and make one for the accounting department, you could take your existing answer file, make some changes to it, save it as a different file name, and then you'd be able to iterate from there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so yeah, if you tick that cloud-only connection box, it will skip that initial 5-minute period of trying to connect locally. That's the only difference between the two. Click Next. Here's where you can optionally enter an answer file description. The purpose of this is that any form of SmartDeploy media, except for console-initiated deployment, so that's USB or WDS boot media or USB offline deployment media, can actually use multiple answer files. So if you're creating a USB stick and you want to have, let's say, that sales answer file and that accounting answer file, and you want to just have your technician pick the appropriate answer file at deployment time, you could do that. And if you were doing that, you might put in a description here that just says sales department, and then maybe updated today's date, that sort of thing.
Glenn, why would I use two? You lost me there. Would I have like a company one and then a department one that piggybacks on it? Why would I do two or what next?
So if you have a technician that you know is going to be deploying machines with multiple different settings, and you want them to be able to pick an answer file, that's to say an entire set of settings for one machine or for another. Basically, they're going to boot to that USB stick. They'll get a drop down that says which one of these answer files do you want to use. They'll select the appropriate one, and then if you picture that as a branching set of choices here, each one of those is going to have a complete set of instructions for Deploy Wizard. So those could differ drastically from each other. They could have different images. They could have different sets of application packs. They could have different folders for platform packs. They could one could do user data migration and one could not. If you want to have your technicians have a USB stick that has the ability to do many different scenarios, this would be how you would do it.
Oh yeah, no. So I thought you meant I was going to use two answer files simultaneously. So okay, thank you for clearing that up.
You would use one or the other.
Okay, gotcha.
Some people prefer to use separate media for that because they just want to have no clicks at all. For WDS in particular, boot images are just going to cost you a little bit of disk space. You just pixie boot the device, and then you'd have a WDS boot menu. So if you wanted to have one boot image for sales and one boot image for accounting, and they're both completely unattended, you could simply pixie boot the device and select the appropriate boot image from WDS, and you wouldn't mess with this at all. You would just include one answer file for each boot image. But some people prefer to use a single boot image, but then have multiple answer files that they can select. So we basically offer both options here. This was definitely in response to user feedback. We had a lot of folks who use USB sticks because that's sort of the level of scalability that they want for the number of machines they're deploying, but they like to have that flexibility of being able to use multiple instruction sets for it without having to manually recreate their media or swap out answer files each time.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a summary page here. This is just everything you entered. We'll click Next and Finish. It's going to prompt you to save that file. By default, it's going to be in that C drive SmartDeploy answer files folder. So we'll go ahead and save it. SmartDeploy test.xml. One thing it's going to do here is tell me that those dummy credentials that I entered in the network credentials page are not valid. So it is going to check and make sure that you didn't mistype your network credentials. And in most cases, you're going to want to click, oh, yes, I want to fix that right now. Because if you don't fix that right now, your answer file is not going to work. You're going to boot to your media on the target device. It's not going to be able to map a network drive, and it's not going to be able to proceed with deployment. But in this case, because I'm not planning on doing anything with this, I'm just going to click No. It will then save the answer file here, and then in just a second, that should appear right here in the answer files view, and there it is. And so, Tara, as you mentioned, if you wanted to edit or iterate on this existing one, you could right-click Edit the answer file, and it will open right back up in Answer File Wizard, same as before, and it will have all of the settings that we entered already. So you can see it's already attended. You can see it's already selected our media and all our image, our lovely network credentials here, and all of that.
So, Glenn, I have a weird question. Maybe it's a weird question. I hope not.
I love weird questions.
I know. So I have these questions because I'm currently learning this project, right? So it's a big product and there's a lot of questions. Can I add something to the answer file to run Windows updates so I'm not having to create a new image once a month?
You could do that. It's generally something that you would want to control externally in some way, because whatever you're adding to the answer file is only going to be done once as a part of deployment. So it is possible to run a command. I believe it's wusa.exe, and then there are a couple different options for that to basically tell that device, hey, run Windows Update one time on first logon, for example, and it'll go ahead and run Windows Update using whatever settings are configured on that machine. So by default, that's going to be reaching out to Microsoft and installing whatever updates are recommended. If you want to automate that to a greater degree, you might want to use something like Windows Server Update Services, or WSUS, or there is actually a patch management feature built into SmartDeploy as well. So what that has the ability to do is for any endpoint that has the SmartDeploy client installed, it can detect whether Windows Update is enabled, disabled, paused. It can detect whether any updates are available, and it can basically tell those devices to update themselves. So you can select a single machine and click update. You can select multiple machines and click update, and that is the equivalent of logging onto that machine, launching Windows Update, and clicking check for updates. So it'll proceed with whatever the automatic settings are. And you can do that en masse. You can tell all of your machines to update at once. It will defer things like feature updates unless that feature update becomes recommended from Microsoft, which only occurs after the version of Windows that you're on is no longer supported. That's the point at which Microsoft will force you to install the feature update, and that's the point at which toggling that operation from patch management would trigger the same behavior. As of 3.0.1050, which is our next version of SmartDeploy, we're actually adding a couple of new features to patch management. We're adding the ability to toggle Microsoft Update on or off. Microsoft Update is distinct from Windows Update in that it allows you to update other Microsoft products as well. So if you've got Office installed on that machine, it can pull down Office updates as well, for example. So you can you'll be able to toggle that behavior on, as well as detect the current state of that behavior on that machine.
Awesome.
Cool. We've got a couple of questions that we can get to. We've gone a little long today. Do you have time for a couple of questions, Glenn?
Yeah, hit me.
All right.
All right, one moment.
This will be our speed round. We're going to try and bust these out as fast as humanly possible. Is it possible for platform packs to update device EUFI when UEFI passwords are configured? James D.
I love this question because it is highly specific to the particular manufacturer of the device that you're talking about. So there are ways to update a BIOS or UEFI password, but they tend to be specific to, like, Dell, Lenovo, and HP all have command line tools that allow you to do this. They all have command line tools that allow you to, I know HP in particular lets you encrypt a password as a .bin file. You can then use those .bin files to basically pass through a command line that says, hey, use this bin file to specify a password, use this bin file as the new password that I'm going to apply. So it's a bit convoluted, but there is a way to do it. And automating those command line tools with SmartDeploy is definitely something that you can do, either as a part of deployment or as an application pack. And we do have customers that have routinely done that. They often will have command lines that allow you to toggle other BIOS settings as well. We had a customer who wanted to set specific up hours for those machines. So they would automatically boot at a particular time and automatically shut down at another time. And he was able to do that through the command line. It was very impressive. So whatever the manufacturer of that device will allow you to automate, you can use SmartDeploy to push out those commands.
Cool. All right, let's do a couple more real fast. Is SmartDeploy good for a school environment and currently uses WDS? Matt V.
Not only is SmartDeploy good for that environment, you are describing several of our customers. We have a lot of school districts that use SmartDeploy, and we have a lot of school districts that use SmartDeploy with WDS. So that same answer file wizard process that I just showed you can be used to create an answer file to deploy an image that is for use with Windows Deployment Services. You can use that to create a WDS boot image, which you can then update on your WDS server. One important note on that, Tara actually asked about updating an existing answer file. One note is when you're updating the answer file and saving it here on the SmartDeploy console host, you are just updating a local copy of that XML file that is not being used for anything. When you create SmartDeploy media, a copy of whatever answer file or answer files that you select gets copied into that media itself. So if you are in a WDS environment and you want to update one of your answer files, you would update it here in the console, you would recreate your WDS boot media using that updated answer file, and then you would replace the boot image on your WDS server. But yes, absolutely. And
Cool.
That is something that many school districts in our environment use. So,
all right, let's do two more. All right, here we go. Can you deploy images to multiple computers at one time? And if so, how do you handle naming those computers? And can you specify what OUNAD they are placed in? Nancy T.
Yeah, so Nancy, I'm guessing this question came in before we covered that page.
Yeah, so there we go. Let's just move on.
Let's
Let's just move on to the next question.
If you have any follow-ups on that, definitely reach out to support. So.
And then our final question today, I installed SmartDeploy on my local machine. I would like to move it to a virtual machine. What will have to happen on the move so I don't lose all my existing info? Sandy T.
Yeah, so a couple of things. The contents of the SmartDeploy directory, which by default is C drive SmartDeploy. If you have a secondary data drive on that machine, you can configure it to be D drive SmartDeploy, E drive SmartDeploy, whatever it is, as long as it's a local hard drive on that machine. You will want to copy the contents of that directory from the machine, from the old console host to the new one. All of the files that are in there, your images, your platform packs, those are all going to be essentially portable. It doesn't matter which console created or downloaded them. You can move them from one machine to the other. Your answer files you can transfer over, but you may want to recreate them anyway, particularly if they're pointing to paths that are on that old console host. You'll need to recreate them and point them to the new console host anyway. Any deployment packages that you created, you also will not want to transfer over. You'll want to recreate those because those will be specific to a particular console. The only other thing is that if you have any clients already in your environment that are pointing to that old console, you'll need to redirect those in some way to the new console. And we have a script that we can provide you that you can push out to each one of those machines that will redirect it from one console to the other. So if that's something that you need in your environment, reach out to SmartDeploy support and we can definitely help you out with that.
How do they get to SmartDeploy support, especially if there were questions today that we haven't been able to get to?
So the easiest way to do that is to go to support.smartdeploy.com. That's where you can find our knowledge base. And also in the upper right corner, you can click on Submit a Ticket, and that will come directly to me and my team. So
beautiful. All right, let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up, everybody.
All righty.
Is there a question that Glenn doesn't know the answer to?
No, there's not.
No.
He knows everything.
We should do a whole webcast of just stumping Glenn. Who I know.
I was wondering if we put Glenn on like 0.5 speed, is it just like a regular conversation?
No, but here's the other thing, Glenn. I understand now why you speak so quickly, because you have so much information to get out at a well done.
Well done, Glenn. Well done, Glenn.
All right.
Thanks for watching today, everybody. Tune in next week, same time.
I like that. That's a hard exit.
Thank you for being a part of our webcast today. If you had questions that we were not able to get to today, feel free to reach out to our support forums. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you back here next week.